Good morning and welcome, and try this again. 3 times is a charm. I'm blabbering instead of getting into this. So, yesterday's video didn't happen because it kept getting up there processing and then getting booted out and starting all over again. It happens. I think it's YouTube's robots saying we don't like this and kicking it out. And so I'll have to get a little bit creative writing with that. I wanted to bring it to you because it was fresh. It was news story that it was a true crime thing. We all know YouTube is all like, oh my gosh, we don't want you guys doing that stuff. It's terrible. Whatever, it's life. It was an update on a case that I have covered a couple times earlier before YouTube got too crazy with what they like and don't like. So here we are. Today's video, this morning's video, what I'm going to do is talk to you a little bit about something. And this is spurred by all of these, what they call cancel culture. Oh my God. Oh my God. If, you need to get rid of this. This should have never happened. If, all this blah, 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 blah. Listen, it doesn't matter. If this didn't happen, no matter what, the world is what it is today because of everything that happened in the past. If it wasn't for everything, and I mean every single thing, if something didn't happen even by 30 seconds, things would not be the exact same as it is today. Here's an exercise that, and go ahead, get yourself a piece of paper and a pen. I'll wait. Get a piece of paper and pen, because this is an important exercise for any of you, and especially if you're a teacher. Guys, share this video. If you're a teacher, I don't care if you're a Sunday school teacher, a high school teacher, elementary school teacher, whatever. Grab a piece of paper, because this is something that my history teacher did. We were about to go from one thing to another, and I believe it was Easter break. And they did not want to start us off on something new like 2 days before Easter break, and we would be gone a week, okay? At the beginning of something new. So we were given, talked about history and how every little thing that lines up brings us to where we are today. If one thing didn't happen, everything would be different. And so we were given the task of write on one page, front and back, what we thought our lives would be like if something in our life was different. If something was different, period. If one thing had not been the same, what would our lives be like? I'll tell you, that is a very deep thought to have when you are, I believe I was a 10th grader. That is a very deep thought to have. And with all of our cancel culture and all of our, oh, let's destroy this, let's remove this, let's get rid of that. Listen, if anything back there had not happened, if Christopher Columbus had left the day after he did and missed the storms that were happening, he'd have landed where he was supposed to land, and he wouldn't have landed in the United States, which we know today is the United States, let's say. Back then I didn't know where my family came from, but now I do. Let's say my family did not come over on the good ship Anne from England. They came over at a different time and came over on a different ship and landed where they did. Even if they changed it by one day, it would have changed things. We were graded on our little project we had to do. And I have to tell you, we had a class probably of like 22, 24 kids. Our senior class was like over 80 kids. We had a fairly big school. And so our class was all like the same grade kids. And I have to tell you, not very many of the kids got a good grade. If you actually had thought about it, you got like an A or something like that. If you did the project, you got a D. If you did the project, period. If you didn't, you got an F. I mean, if you came in and you didn't write anything, you didn't even put any effort in it, you got an F. You were failed. There's no, oh, I'm sorry. Okay, we're just going to go ahead and give you a grade. None of that crap happened when I was in school. Just face it. If you didn't do your work, you failed. There's no, oh, I feel sorry for you. Crap. That it was what it was. We were given grades based on what we did, not on pity. Okay. There was only about, I would say, I think there's like 5 or 6 of us that actually got an A. I think there's 2 of us that got an A+. And I'll tell you why. Hold on. My coffee's sitting here getting cold. There were a lot of kids that were like, oh, if my life changed, I would be wealthy and rich and my family would have money and my dad would be Hulk Hogan, you know, or my mom would be, you know, this woman, you know, and some famous actress type person, or if things were different, I would be the next Magnum PI, Tom Selleck. And there were girls that were like, oh, I would be the next Farrah Fawcett Majors, you know. I'm sorry. Whatever, talk about vanity here, but, you know, it is what it is. Oh, I would be driving, you know, the Bandit's car. Now I'm forgetting what the heck it is, but, you know, I would be driving Corvettes and Firebirds and all this stuff, you know, whatever. The vanity, those people got D's. They did not think, use their head and think about the project. They did not actually think about what would truly happen if something changed. They did not put down in their paper, this is what would change. They did not think. Those of us that put the effort into it and thought, if something changed in our lives, and this is kind of where I went, okay, I started with, well, like I told you, if Christopher Columbus had left either the day before or the day after and he missed the storm, he would have never gotten twisted around in the storm and he would have landed where he was supposed to have. he would not have landed here. Yes, eventually people would have landed in what we know as the United States, and things would have happened, and maybe things would have happened differently. But the timing would have been different, and so would have the entire history. Things would have happened at a different time. So therefore, I wouldn't have happened. If all of that changed, the time of any wars, names of wars, everything, every single thing would have been different. Different people would have been running things differently. Different outcomes would have happened because people would have been at different ages. Different people would have been involved. Different mindsets even, because different generations and different times and different, even with the actual people that were here, the I'm sorry, I'm going to use the phrase Indians, don't come after me. The they were here, and it would have been many, many years difference. Different tribal leaders would have been in play with different people coming in. It all would have been different. There would have been a whole different, everything would have been different. They still would have had their mindset, but maybe the people coming in would have had a different mindset, changing everything. Nothing would have been the same. So let's go forward into when my family was in the United States. Okay, back in the 1600s. They would have come in, if they came in at a different time, maybe even if they came in 10 years later, or even 1 year later, or even 1 day difference, they would have met a different person. They would have landed maybe at a different place, or they'd have come in on a different ship and known different people when they came in on the ship who would have introduced them to different people. You never know. If they came in on a different ship, they would have landed maybe at a different port or a different area, and I would have been, my family would have been in a different area. You don't know who they would have met. Let's move it on down to, let's say, my great-grandparents. My great-grandfather, his family was French. They came from France. His wife, Inez O'Brien, her parents came over from Ireland. They married. If neither of them came over when they did, they would have never met. They would have never married. They would have never had 3 children, one of them being my grandfather. Now, he died of stomach issues and other problems when he was young. He married Inez. She was only 14 years old when they got married and had their children. And she actually gave my grandfather to his uncle to raise. So he was raised as a Sprague instead of a Dio. But doesn't matter. That whole thing would have been different. The children would have been different. They would have never married. My grandfather would have never existed if they had never met. So where would I have been? Then let's take it one step farther. What if they did meet and they had their children, and Wiled, my grandfather, was born, but what if Inez did not let his uncle raise, and she just took them and took off? I don't know where Inez went. I don't know where the other 2 children are. I've never been able to figure that out. So what if she just took all 3 of them? Gone. I don't know where they went. So I would have never known. That would have never happened. He would have never met my grandmother, and they would have never had children. My dad would have never existed. I would not exist. So we're going to take that to another step. Okay, what if everything happened like it did, and my grandfather, Wiley, they knew him as Wiley, met my grandmother, Laura, and they had children. They had 2. Wiley, though, was a player, and he liked women, liked a lot of women. My grandmother did not like that. Wiley ran off. Yeah, he ran off and left my grandmother. Left her with 2 little boys to raise, and she worked a lot of hours. What if Wiley didn't run off and stayed with my grandmother, and my grandmother did not move back to Livingston Manor to live? What if they stayed in Lou Beach? My dad would have grown up and never met my mother. But no, Wiley ran off, left my grandmother, ran off with wild women, never to be seen again for years and years. My grandmother filed for divorce, got divorced. She moved to Livingston Manor, met a man, eventually got married. But I believe by the time she got married, my dad was an adult. But my dad helped raise his younger brother. What if my grandmother got married before then and moved away? My dad would have never met my mother. He would not have lived in Livingston Manor. So if this had never happened, my dad would have never met my mother. Now, what if my dad and my mother met in a bar? Okay. What if my mom had not been out with the girls that night? And what if my dad had not been out with the guys that night and met at that bar? They both had to been at the same bar at the same night and met. If they had not been there at the same exact time, my brother would have never happened, and my mom and dad would have never been together. Because let's face it, my mom and dad got together, and eventually they, my mom got pregnant, and then they got married, and that's how that happened. I would have never existed. I was the last of 4 kids. So that would have never happened. If my dad had not decided to go to the bar that night, to that specific hole-in-the-wall bar, on a back road, on a dangerous back road, on a side hill, in the middle of nowhere, on a riverbank, and my mom goes to the same bar, which is a popular bar, by the way, they would have never met. The same with my mom. What if her and the girls decided to go to a different bar that night? Or maybe they didn't go out at all. It doesn't matter. So as you can see, every little detail had to happen for you to exist. My paper was like more than 1 sheet. My paper was pages long. And then what if my mom and dad did not go out that night and something happened and they didn't do their thing? And what if their little swimmers didn't work and my mom didn't become pregnant? They would have never gotten married and I would not exist. No matter what you think, if you change one little thing in history, your background, your past, no matter how you want to look at it, you can take away anything you want. If you do, you, as you're sitting here today, watching this video, would not exist. You can say, oh, I would be somebody else, but no, you would not be somebody else. You would not exist. Don't be so quick to want to change our history, our past, your history, because if you do, you would not exist. It's as plain and simple as that. Everybody, have a wonderful day. Bye, guys.